afternoon, folks. I hope you're having a great time here at the C3 Tech Summit. We're going to start here with our cyber panel talking about balance, agility, risk, and really trying to understand how to get the most out of your security investment, how to pick the right partner, and some other topics. So without further ado, my name's Ryan Dengate. I'm one of the sales engineers here at C3. Been with the organization for just over 7 years and really watched us grow into an organization that can really help you evaluate and pick the right suppliers to help meet your business outcomes and your goals there. So happy that you could join us. And without further ado, I'll have our panelists from order closest to furthest away take a minute. Tell us who you are, who you work for, and kind of what are the core services that your organization provides.
Sure. So I'm Michael Leggett, Principal Security Solutions Architect at Avertium. We're a cybersecurity and compliance services shop. So working with folks to think through their cybersecurity program, any compliance drivers they might have, with a special emphasis on the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's a lot of thinking through ways that you can optimize what you've already invested in, things that you could sunset, and ways that we can align your program to help not only meet your business drivers, but also align with compliance.
I'm Dave Johnson. I work at Agile Blue. We provide a SOC as a service platform for our customers, so back-end SIM, along with managed detection response capabilities with a 24/7 SOC backing it up. Currently, my role is the senior solutions engineer from the pre-sales side, but I am coming over from advisory services as well, which is another service that we provide customers, providing vCISO and advisory work as well.
Joe Puzo. I hate my long title, but let's go. It is Senior Director of Security Solutions Engineering at CommandLink. CommandLink is an aggregator. So for some of you that don't know us, we aggregate your circuits, ISPs, networking equipment, firewalls, SD-WAN, as well as security. We want to be your one-stop shop that's going to help you not only manage your infrastructure, but also to take that lift of security off of you from a network, from a device, and third-party tool perspective.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Hatcher. I'm one of the co-founders of White Knight Labs. We're a boutique offensive cybersecurity consultancy. So we do network penetration testing, cloud infrastructure penetration testing, and then some more niche things that we do are ransomware simulations, physical access operations, VIP home security assessments as well. My background is in Army Special Forces. I was a Green Beret 5th Group for a bit. Then I taught Windows internals at the NSA, and I was a red team lead for CISA. So when my business partner and I wanted to start WKL back in 2021, the culture is based very similarly to Army Special Forces, where every engineer is very deep in their lane. There's no engineers at the company that peanut butter or try to do everything. So the embedded team just does embedded team stuff, and then the physical guys, they just practice ways to clone RFID badges and break into buildings all day.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for that. We're going to dive right in. One thing that most all of us here on stage are very familiar with is providing some sort of managed services or managed detection and response. There's a lot of different acronyms out there. SOC as a service, I heard from Dave. But I'm curious from each of you and your perspectives on this, what are MDR providers doing right? What could they be doing better? And maybe how do you differentiate in your own service offering? Who wants to take that one first?
I mean, I could jump in and talk about that. When you're talking about MDR, managed services with any company, you need to be an augmentation to their workflows. You need to make sure that you're listening to the customer, you're understanding what their needs are, and you're going to be that extension for them. A lot of times whenever you're speaking to infrastructure, security, IT, they're always nervous about their job. Any managed service needs to be that, hey, we're looking out for you. Hey, while you sleep, that's when we step in. If you don't have the knowledge, the insight, that's where we step in. We're pulling all that information. We're correlating that data together. We're looking at that big picture. Let us help you. And I think that's where a lot of the fear in kind of managed services comes from, because it's like, well, then I'm not going to have a job next week. When
Yeah, it
that's
sounds
not
like trying to balance. That's where the balance part of this is how do we rely on the right partner and balance the workload and still achieve our outcomes. Dave or Michael, you have?
Yeah, I'll add on to that point. I think having a proactive team that can manage the customers, right, for their expectations. So not every customer environment is the same. Even if you're getting the similar logs, they might react differently. And so having a somewhat of a customer team that is more proactive, addressing concerns from the client themselves, right? If let's say they're getting too many alerts, right, and they're reacting at 2 o'clock in the morning, you probably want to polish that a little bit. And so having that proactive like touch point with them to make sure that not only are you addressing any concerns that they may have, but you're also asking certain questions. A common problem I see a lot of times is you deploy these solutions into their environment to monitor, threats and logs and whatnot, and your job is to get visibility into their entire scope of their environment. But sometimes either new assets enter the environment or new systems, and having that constant touch point to make sure that we're not missing anything, or if something dropped offline, we want to make sure that they're alerted to that as well. Because if our goal is to monitor everything, we got to monitor everything.
Yeah, I think the actual service wrapper around the MDR that you're providing is the most important piece. There's a lot of feature parity amongst different MDR providers, and between the clients that I see have a lot of success and the ones that don't, it really comes down to how much collaboration they are having with the vendor. So whether that's working through biweekly or monthly checkpoints, what are we seeing in the environment, what can we do based on the alerts that we're seeing, and treating it as an extension of your team versus somebody that's just throwing the alerts over the fence, that's really going to be the differentiator whether or not this is a worthwhile investment.
Great.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different take just because we're directly, I don't want to say going against the MDR provider, but if we go against CrowdStrike, Overwatch, if we're doing a red team against them, we never want to be adversarial. We typically work with them to do a purple team engagement. Some of the things that we've seen, gaps in visibility with MDR providers. So maybe they're really good at watching the internal and external network, Active Directory, but as soon as we pivot to Azure infrastructure via AD Connect from the on-prem AD environment to the Entra ID environment, all of a sudden that visibility goes away. So some of the things that we hunt for when we're doing our offensive security work on the network is finding these gaps in visibility. So if you're in the market to hire an MDR provider, make sure that they're actually doing validation controls, doing purple team. Also, who's actually within the MDR provider themselves, whose eyes on network watching glass too, because you don't want the entry level person, even though you're paying a high data rate or subscription, to be watching your network.
I heard a couple gaps come up, communication gaps and just kind of the testing and working together. Were there any other sort of gaps or things that might be coming to mind when either selecting or working with a MDR provider? I think of tool integrations and maybe making sure that all of those work properly, but
Well, I think just from an educational standpoint, understand that there can be wide variety of different MDR services. So MDR is mostly a marketing term that's leveraged to adopt to whatever the actual service is being provided. So for some folks, that's just endpoint. For some, it's endpoint and a SIM technology. For some, it's those two in identity. Some, it's network detection. So just having a clear understanding of what the service is supposed to be affording you, and then understanding that that is just one piece of the overall puzzle. Because I think there's this idea that, well, if I have this MDR service, that's what I need. That's the last thing I need for my program, and then I can just set it and forget it. And that is not the case. It needs to constantly be updated and evolved as your environment is changing, and understanding what sort of gaps exist within the environment that maybe aren't covered from that outsourced MDR service is going to be important so that you can create compensating controls.
I think just to kind of build off that, the education of exactly what you said, that I just think, oh, I have security, I'm good. I can set it, that's with anything that they have. An EDR tool, whatever it is, the misconception is, oh, I purchased it, I deployed it, okay, I'm good. I'll look at it again in a year when I'm checking for a new vendor, when that's not the case with any tool that you purchase. Whatever it is, you need to constantly be reviewing it, understanding it, seeing what changes have been made. And it's the education in the entire market just is not there from that perspective.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's one thing we did talk about, but I'm curious a little bit of maybe a twist on that. How do your organizations help with that skill development and help keep from various platforms? I mean, all of you must support, multiple different platforms. What goes into helping educate and upskill your workforce to help provide that to your customers?
Oftentimes in purple team engagements, the red team will work hand in hand with the blue team or the SOC. especially when we find gaps in visibility. So as opposed to just like dumping LSAS or going after certain attack paths, we're doing that live with the blue team so that they can tune their tooling and they can have a better understanding of offensive security, and then they can detect threats better.
Yeah, there's a requirement for our analysts on our team to stay up on certifications for the various platforms that we support. But then we're a heavy Microsoft shop as well. So the alignment that we have with them allows us to understand what's coming down the pike from a road mapping perspective, what new capabilities are afforded to clients from the licensing that they have. So a lot of the conversations that I'm having from an educational standpoint are working with clients to help them understand, like, you've bought this technology. Here's what it can actually do for you in the environment. Here's things that it does well. Here's things they say it does well, and maybe you want to use something else. And here's things that are coming down the line for you to keep perspective on as you're making decisions for your investments moving forward.
And I'll add, like, even from the advisory services side, the team that we have, they have a wide set of like experience, right? So not everybody's a network engineer or former network engineer or just a security guy, right? You had pointed out in regards to like blue teaming, right? Identifying the gaps along the way. You've just sent a fake attack through email. Did you get an alert in your email service, whatever that may be, right? All the way down to the endpoint. Is the endpoint alerting into these types of alerts? So, essentially having the customer embedded into that engagement, as well as our SOC team and obviously our advisory services team, has helped like improve the confidence in the customer, but also gives them a learning lesson as well, as far as educating them, as far as these alerts are going to come through different mechanisms and how we're all stitching that together and providing a valuable service.
And just kind of another lane that myself, Command Link, and I've done in the past. I've been very heavily in enablement internally and externally over the last couple years, and leveraging partners like C3 to get information out there. We've been doing a lot of webinars just on education, just on specific areas, network, what you need to do on endpoints. Getting that information out there that's not really salesy. I hate being salesy. I like just educating. And that is something else that's just really, really important because, I mean, yes, we'll get on calls with customers, but if you guys have your customers, you call them, you're like, look, this vendor is doing a webinar on endpoint hygiene. You should really take a look at it. I could send it to you after. Just leveraging that external outreach, I'm really, really seeing a lot of adoption. When you get on those calls, they still have the same questions, but it kind of triggers them a little bit more to be like, oh yeah, I remember I saw that. Oh yeah, I'm going to start implementing that. And that's when you can really start having those next level conversations with them because you've already kind of cracked the door open a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of repetition once in a while is a good thing, right? Getting the message across. As we're talking about education and working with our clients, I'm curious, how are you working with your clients to help ensure that they're using the proper security controls? What do those conversations look like to really help build the right profile and put the right people, processes, and tools in their environment?
Yeah, so for us, our methodology when we're working with any client is assess, design, protect. And we start with assess for that exact reason. So whether it's aligning with a particular framework, if you don't have one or you're not compelled to do so because of some industry standard, it's aligning with a known best practice, CIS, NIST, CSF, things of that nature. Starting to look at things holistically and understanding what's your acceptable level of risk, what are you driving towards as a business, and then working back from there to align the people, processes with the tools. And from that perspective, if you look at that from a programmatic view, it sort of shifts away from, oh, I'm just one tool away, or I need to improve this tool because it's going to give me this outcome, more so looking at things holistically and down a path of saying like, okay, here's a variety of different gaps and ways that maybe I could achieve them with the tools that I have today. And I would rather have someone have an A+ program with C+ products than vice versa. So that's sort of our motion there and the way that we try to assist.
Yeah, a similar methodology, right? You're going to assess what the risks are in the environment and want to wrap things around that, right? We've had it where organizations come to us with already an assessment done, right? Either it was pushed through a regulatory or compliance standard of some sort, and they want us to help advise on how they should implement the program, right, as a whole. But it all starts with assessing at the beginning. And determining where the gaps are and trying to help them close them up.
And then after that, I would say, especially from what we're seeing, that's when account management and customer success really step in, because that's when they're going to, and to circle back to the management aspect, that's when we're really the trusted advisors checking up on them, making sure that they're leveraging the tools how they should, making sure that they know the new features that are coming out, making sure that they are understanding what they purchased. Not that they just, oh yeah, I'm need to bill this every month. No, they understand what they've purchased, why they've purchased it, and to me, that's really like the biggest part of account management and customer success, to tie that up, make sure you're constantly touching, constantly kind of advising, really.
Sure.
Yeah, on the assess piece, if the first time we have a touch point with the client, I'm trying to assess their maturity level. So I think of cybersecurity almost as a pyramid, like a hierarchical pyramid where, okay, are you doing asset inventory of software and hardware at the bottom? Okay, you're doing that. Are you doing vulnerability scanning? Okay, have you done a penetration test? If you've done a penetration test for the last 5 years, are you still getting highs and criticals? If yes, then you're probably not ready for a red team. Then a red team or a purple team would be kind of like the top of the pyramid. So that first engagement, we're kind of seeing where they are. If you know if they've done a penetration test, it might be time for a red team. Or we're finding other areas that haven't even been looked at. If there's certain compliance requirements like HIPAA, PCI DSS, obviously the engagement is going to be focused on finding areas where the client is going to be failing at those compliance requirements, because that's going to have direct monetary punitive actions.
We mentioned in the title of this is risk, so I want to touch on risk a little bit. Maybe from each of your perspective and what you say, what is a risk that you see maybe commonly or not common out there that you think would be worth sharing with the group here?
Yeah, so
cybersecurity risks. Sorry.
Yeah, so a very common cybersecurity risk, we're still seeing MFA disabled on external applications, SaaS applications. Short passwords in Active Directory. So if someone's using like an 8-character password policy, we can usually crack those all the passwords within a couple hours. We have a GPU-powered cracker in AWS. But then understanding that if you're running in a hybrid environment, an on-premise Active Directory environment, you're using AD Connect to hybrid to Azure infrastructure. If we're able to gain domain admin privs on the on-prem, we can pivot to Azure extremely easy. So understanding hybrid makes it really easy, but it also makes it very easy for attackers because all the passwords and credential material is the exact same.
I'll take a softball hit with it, but I think when you're talking about risk, what I'm really seeing is alert and tool fatigue. These IT teams are just stretched so thin that what they're seeing, it's just noise to them. They don't have the ability to address everything that they need to in the proper way, in a timely way. And I mean, that's business risk right there. You don't know what's happening because there's just too much input. And again, to circle back, that's why managed services is so important for us to help with that and take that off them to reduce that risk.
Interesting thing that we've identified recently is like the M365 environment. It is riddled with just amount of configurations. And typically when you look at organizations, typically the sysadmins are the ones responsible for standing up the environment, making it work, and then they did their job, thumbs up. But the problem is there's a lot of configurations within M365 just out of the box. And so, I found that some of the organizations, standing it up against CISA's benchmarks, just as an example, anywhere from 80 to 100 findings just related to that. Now, not everything needs to be triaged, and they may be handling that risk differently. But I found that there's... personally, if you asked me to go do it today, I wouldn't be able to do it right. And I don't expect most sysadmins to go find the security configurations within M365. And so that's one of the glaring kind of areas of risk that we've found more recently.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the desire to adopt technologies without properly understanding how they're going to impact your environment, particularly with AI being such a hot topic right now, coming from top down, is posing a lot of risks in the environment. So we're getting asked a lot from more of the mature organizations or the ones that sort of understand the risks to say, okay, can we do some sort of review of this environment so that we can responsibly adopt? But a lot of that's coming after the fact. So it's, hey, actually we adopted these AI practices because we were hot to trot. We understand there's a lot of risk now. Can we go back and fix it? And it's much easier to do so beforehand. to align with a known good framework, to understand who's going to be responsible for this, what their roles and responsibilities are, how we're going to map, measure, all that fun stuff prior to the adoption, than it is to try to do it retroactively. And with AI, the largest risk that I'm seeing to organizations is from their internal risks and the data leakage and the sharing. And those are the sort of things that I think a lot of times, especially from top down, they're not really considering prior to adoption. It's almost gotten to the point where people are asking us, oh, what could we do with AI? We're going to do something, so what could we do with it? As opposed to thinking through their program and understanding, okay, here's the outcomes we want. What tools would be best to help us get there, AI or otherwise? It seems there's such a rush in the zeitgeist to somehow adopt AI. Oh, by the way, we should make it secure, I guess. And I'm worried for the future if that's how we continue moving forward.
Since you brought up AI, because nobody's talked about it here today, I'm curious from each of you, how do you see AI being a positive and a negative impact when it comes to security operations, getting the right visibility, creating the right type of response? And I always when I talk with people about managed services and what they should expect, it's we want actionable information, something that's enriched and really helpful, not just an alert. So how do you think AI is positively and negatively impacting security operations?
Go ahead.
So there's a really great piece in Foreign Affairs that Jen Easterly, a former director of CISA from 2021 to 2025, she just wrote this last month. She makes the argument that America doesn't really have like a cybersecurity problem. We actually have a software security problem. So let me explain that. So when humans write insecure code and then it gets like they make software and then it gets pushed, right? So capitalism is directly like juxtaposed to secure software because companies they're not like motivated to write secure software. They'll just get like a CVE and pay like a bug bounty hunter. So AI is positioned to solve this problem. We're not there yet, but I think within 3 to 5 years we could be. The problem is that right now LLMs are learning from developers that are still writing insecure code. So if you are vibe coding a web application, it's going to be riddled with bugs. Just like if you go buy any software product, it's probably riddled with bugs. But Jen makes the argument that after the LLM learns how to write secure software, we can sort of like, I don't want to say remove humans permanently, but we can definitely create software that has much less bugs. Because right now they're just like all these software solutions in the cybersecurity market, like EDRs, for example, we're bolting those on. It's like a Band-Aid on an arterial gushing wound, right? So we have to make an EDR for the Windows operating system because it's riddled with bugs. But if the Windows operating system was made like with security in mind, starting at like the base level, we wouldn't have to. So one of the negatives of AI is that it makes it very easy to write convincing phishing emails. And then also we're using LLM and doing agentic phishing right now at my company. So we're spoofing voices to sound like the CEO, the CISO, the COO. It really depends who we're calling. We'll spoof the phone number and then we'll actually impersonate that person's voice. We typically like create a sense of urgency to wire money out of the company, something like that. It's never been more relevant. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Jaguar Land Rover breach that happened. That was just a phishing call. They called them, and that was essentially resulted in a $2.5 billion breach. The Vegas breach, that was another phishing call. Yeah, I'm not going to take up any more time. I could talk about this for hours.
You're on a roll.
Identifying threats. I mean, that's really what it's good at, right? You get thousands and thousands of logs events per second, and trying to pick out the needle in the haystack. We found it to be very effective in identifying those threats, boiling those what's meaningful data up to our SOC analysts, which are human, right? And so I want to point out it should not replace humans in a SOC environment. It might alleviate the need to have 200 SOC analysts, right? And you might get away with that, but it doesn't completely get away from the need of actually needing a SOC analyst to review cases, alerts, things like that. Outside of the SOC, logging and monitoring, I think I read a report yesterday. Well, first off, I've been approached by organizations asking, like, how should we treat AI? What should we do about it, right? And the answer is really, here's the concerns around using AI, right, is really around data leakage. That's really like my first concern around it. And in fact, yes, last night, coincidentally, this is just the topic that came up on my phone. I can't cite the source, but it really noted that that data leakage is actually attributed to copy pasting now. And why do we think that's the case? Because people are copying and pasting it into AI chatbots, GPT, whatever it may be, right? And I've seen organizations, building out policy templates, and it may not actually impact like PII data, PCI data, things like that. And organizations are generally pretty okay about training their employees on how to interact with those sorts of sensitive data elements. But it could just be an internal document that was not supposed to be meant out in the public internet, right? It could be a policy document or a procedures document. Well, now your procedures are out there on the internet, right? And writing that. And so, the copy pasting is definitely, that's an interesting vector, because usually it's like, oh, somebody's sending it out via email or whatever. But no, it's AI is introducing that as a new risk now. So.
The great thing about it, we've all kind of said, the correlation of data, letting AI to understand and provide the information to a human. That is always going to be first and foremost how it's going to help us. But the second piece to it, which we kind of already alluded to, is that AI is being used for malicious purposes, to go ahead and spoof emails, to spoof people. We have tools like email phishing campaigns, and we have tools that are helping to educate, but I think there is a really, really large gap. I mean, we've all been kind of talking about it, how to use AI. Like, we need to start training on how to use AI. That should be something that in an onboarding, you're taught, this is what you can do with ChatGPT, this is what you shouldn't do. And I have not seen that really either used or adopted anywhere. And I think that's what we need to do, because it's not going anywhere. AI is not going to leave. We need to know how to use it. We need to know as security advisors, but we also need to teach just everyone else on how to use it.
Yeah, I think using it and also knowing like how much of it to believe in, and also kind of use some critical thinking skills to figure out like how much to really rely on that.
That's the dangerous part
Yeah.
about it, because
It's not always correct.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I would say in a perverse kind of way, it's improved data security, because people are now understanding that if I'm adopting these sort of chatbots in my environment, or I'm leveraging AI for certain capabilities, I've effectively eliminated security through obscurity in my environment, which was not a best practice anyway. But they were like, well, they'll never try to access that. They don't even know it's there. And now it's far too easy to get information. So I think for some of the more mature organizations, they're realizing we need to take a more concerted effort around our data security to prevent things like data leakage, to align our policies with actual sensitivity labels and the DLP enforcement around that sort of stuff. So we're seeing a lot of work with leveraging Purview, especially for folks in the Microsoft ecosystem, because of the AI adoption. They're trying to do it the right way. So that's, I guess, the positive. The negative is all those companies that aren't doing that and all the problems that come with it.
Sure. We got just a few minutes left. I want to show of hands. Anybody have any questions for our panelists? I will make a quick trip down.
Thank you very much. Hey guys, fascinating insights. I would like to say what I got from your comments is the key notion of risk. So the three things that I got is risk-based decision making, continuous risk monitoring, and then balancing risk and reward. And actually the middle one could also factor in observability. You talked also about AI. So when you talk of the themes I just said, what's your thought about getting over some of the problems of AI, like bias and all that, supervised AI? How do you see the role of reinforcement learning? Because that's the only way, in my opinion, what I know today of the state of the art that can help foster that mindset. Is my question clear?
the biggest point of clarification I would start with that is business risk. We need to make sure that when we're talking about risk with cybersecurity, that we're always tying it back to the business, because that is what's going to drive adoption. All right, IT guys, we love shiny things, we love to do, but the decision makers, they care about the business. So you need to make sure that when you're talking about this, when you're talking about the risks of AI, when you're talking about the risks of tool overload, how is that going to actually affect the business? If your business is down for 3 days, what is that monetary number that you're going to lose? So I'll say the biggest thing is always tying it back to the business.
thank you for our panelists for participating this afternoon. I hope everybody got some good, valuable insights.